So my prayer today is that the Lord give you peace that is unshakable. Yes, my prayer today is that He fills you with a passion for righteousness. Lord, my prayer today is that Jesus will guide you through every storm. Yes, every storm. Lord, every storm. This is my prayer today.
Welcome, everybody, to the Trust in the Lord Hour. I'm your host, James David, Trusting in the Lord Manning. How is everybody doing today? We pray that all is well with you. We actually do mean that. In fact, we've just prayed for you. All right, we're continuing our teaching on understanding of the ATLAH, the land of the predestined, and we're going to try to at least cover, what we know about Harlem, why it's now being called ATLAH, in the next couple of sessions that we have before us, so that all can be brought on board. And I think that the one of the things that Jesus says about the tribulation message and the gospel in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, verse 13 and 14, is that the gospel must be preached unto the ends of the earth. Now, it doesn't mean that, everybody at the ends of the earth will accept it. When Jesus made that statement, what he meant, and I'm absolutely clear about that, is that at least people ought to be able to hear about the gospel, about the blood of Jesus, about salvation, about God's command of humanity, about the fact that Jesus is Lord, not Buddha, not some other, not Allah, but that Jesus is Lord, that people ought to be able to hear that, and they can do with it what they want to do. They can receive it, or they can reject it. But you cannot punish someone who has not heard. And so, I want to remind you, as we are here on the 2nd of March in the year 2022, that we are in the tribulation. I want to remind you that a few years going back, 5 years ago, I announced that Donald John Trump, former president of the United States, is the trigger of the tribulation. Now, you don't have to believe anything I say. You don't have to accept it. And that's the position that Jesus takes with respect to the gospel. This gospel must be preached to the ends of the earth. It isn't that you must receive it, that you have to receive it, that you got to respond to it, you got to believe it. No. That's not the attitude of Jesus, nor the mindset. But in a sense of fairness and equity and justice, at least people ought to be able to hear and make a decision. So you don't have to believe anything I say. I however, would instruct you that if you did believe and receive and responded accordingly, it would be the best thing that you've done in your life. Now, let me raise a question with you, because many of you have been continued to come no matter what, because you find the teaching profitable, but not profitable enough to commit to it. You've got a dual-minded about situations. When we teach the gospel, when we give people the opportunity to hear what thus saith the Lord, and we explain it line upon line and precept upon precept, and some say, well, all right, I've heard it, but I've made a decision not to accept it on its terms, but to accept it on my terms. Then you have to realize that the position of Jesus is that you're not qualified. Jesus does not force anybody to bow down to his teaching. He doesn't force any Muslims. The Muslims can run around and talk about Allah all they want. They can talk that talk and they can make all the Juma they want. They can even quote Jesus and say he's a good prophet. But that's not good enough. But at the very least, Muslims ought to be able to hear that Jesus is Lord, that he's King of Kings. They ought to be able to hear that. Now, what a person does with that information is up to themselves. So it is when the judgment day is made, and there is, and one would then appear before the throne of God. When you die or death comes, or whenever death comes, you're not going to meet Allah. Allah's not going to be there. Allah is not going to be there. I can tell you that now. When you die and you wake up in judgment, it isn't going to be Allah. It's going to be Jesus. I can tell you that now. But let's digress for just a second. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think Jesus would make the culmination of humanity's expanse on earth as an event similar to the days of Noah and the flood, with a great tribulation of wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, earthquakes in divers places? Why do you think that Jesus, in his wisdom, and I assume you believe that he is the Son of God, that he would say that the end of humanity's expanse or experiment is not going to end in a joyous time where all humanity will be of one accord, everybody will be about righteousness or peace or blessings or whatever it is, but everybody will be about one accord. There'd only be one church, one Lord, one baptism. You know, why doesn't Jesus prophesy? Why didn't he prophesy that's what's going to happen? That isn't what he prophesied. He prophesied that he's going to destroy and kill off everybody he can kill except for the elect. The earth itself is going to quake, break up. There's going to be famines, pestilence, wars, rumors of wars, kingdom against kingdom. Why do you think Jesus would say such disturbing and such acts of destruction is what he's going to do at the end of the age of humanity's experience? Why do you think he would do that? You would think, well, he would say everything's going to be wonderful. There's going to be beauty. There's going to be peace. There's going to be love. There's going to be harmony all over the planet Earth. He says just the opposite. He says just the opposite. There's going to be uber destruction, famines, wars, as we have now with the bear, the beast in Russia, in Ukraine. Well, I can answer the question for you in the event you don't want to answer it itself. The reason why there's going to be uber destruction of earthquakes and nearly everybody on earth is going to be killed is because most people do not wish to accept the terms of righteousness. They don't want to accept it. Now, they'll accept the religion all day long and twice on Sunday, but they will not accept the terms of righteousness. And Jesus comes back and says, all right, I'm going to make sure you hear. I'm going to send my messengers, my servants out to tell you so that you can hear. But now once you reject it, then then you've rejected it. And then, of course, there's an unfortunate statement about some who have eyes but don't see, who have ears but don't hear, and don't want to hear, and don't want to see. So therefore, if you reject the terms of righteousness, I don't know if I'm going to be preaching on this coming Saturday about I am Noah. I don't know. There's a whole lot of distance between now, which is Wednesday, and Saturday, which is the Sabbath worship at the ATLAH Church Church. But I may be preaching on a subject such as I am Noah. Why did the people reject the terms of righteousness? Because that's what Noah preached. Noah preached righteousness. Anybody who accepted the terms of righteousness was then able to get on board the boat and be saved. But nobody accepted the term. Now, that's not to say that they weren't righteous. They weren't religious, rather. Pardon me, religious, not righteous. So you ask yourself this question: why is it, better yet, why is it there's a hell? So some people just mean as hell. Okay, all right, I'll give you that. And they need to go. Okay, I'll give you that. But why do you think Jesus did not prophesy it's going to be a wonderful time that's going to cause him to come back? He's going to float down to earth. It's going to be so beautiful, so peaceful. Everybody's going to be loving. There'll be no hunger anywhere. There'll be nobody sick anywhere. Why is it that he's going to, why did he prophesy there's going to be wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes? Why did he do that? Because I can tell you why he did. It's very simple. Humanity does not wish to accept the terms of righteousness. Now, they'll go for religion. They'll go for religion. For instance, today is Ash Wednesday as I speak. On the 2nd of March, year 2022, Catholics get into that. Y'all Baptists and Presbyterian and Methodists and everybody don't get into Ash Wednesday. But it's a formality that the Catholics came up with. They're going to do a sense of penance from now until Easter. They're not going to drink coffee, or they're not going to drink wine, or they're not going to have sweets and so forth. Yeah, whatever that is. They don't mean a doggone thing. But what it does represent is that there's no unity with the Catholics and the Methodists, or there's no unity with the Methodists and the Baptists. Why do you think Jesus will be the author of as many confused denominations and religions as there on planet Earth? I mean, why do you think he'd be the author of that? Jesus is the author of confusion. He's the author of Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, Mormons, Catholics, Church of God in Christ, Greek Orthodox. Jesus is the author of all of that confusion. Are you sick? Are you really, you don't really know the devil is the author of it, and the people that are members of those organizations are members of Satan's kingdom. It's just all there is to it. And God's going to kill them because they won't act right. They won't accept the terms of righteousness. Now, I don't know if I'll be preaching about righteousness, about Noah on Saturday, but I can tell you this. The reason why God killed off everybody in the flood was that they wouldn't accept the term of righteousness. They wouldn't accept it. I'm sure they were religious as the days are long, but they didn't want to accept the terms of righteousness. And there are people that hear me every day, but they don't have no plans of accepting the terms of righteousness. They're not going to do it. I don't care what you say. They're not going to do it. They figure that religion is good enough for them. And let me back up in just a moment and say, to all the Muslims and everybody, on that judgment day, in fact, the Muslims don't even have, Muslims have this whole idea, which I think is kind of risque if you ask me, that, if you die fighting for Allah, you'll go to heaven and you'll be able to have 70 virgins. I mean, come on. This is a strong tenet of the Islamic faith. You're not going to see Allah at the judgment day. But let's go back to this one tenet of Muslim Islam for just 1 second, right? You die as a jihadist. The reward for you being a jihadist is that when you go to heaven, you're going to have 70 virgins to have sex with. I mean, doggone, the Muslims have turned heaven into one great big orgy. Every man that dies in the battlefield got 70 virgins, going to have sex, 70, he got 70 wives up in heaven? My God, that ratio don't even fit. I mean, just to dismantle Islam as a religion has been totally invalid. It's totally invalid. Like Pentecostal and Baptists as well, but let's stay with Islam for just a moment. The ratio of 70 women, and them being virgins too, by the way, for every man that dies on the battlefield is impossible. The population of women may be, in any group of people, women may be a bit more. You might have 52% of the population being women, 48% of the population being men, but 70% of the population being women, and the other 30% being men. That's unreasonable. Anybody with a reasonable understanding of logic would dismiss Islam on the basis of that. That's impossible to be, and it's a falsehood about heaven, and it presents heaven as a boudoir for orgy, for sex, rather than nobility. I mean, the Islamic religion, and you ain't. I mean, it's just it's off the chain in terms of the preposterous ideas that make up the Islamic faith. It's crazy, and they're not going to accept Jesus. I have to admit, they are Hamites, though. But they're not going to accept Jesus. They're not going to do it. You can teach that. Yeah, they'll talk about, oh yeah, Jesus was a good prophet. They'll say that, but as far as they're going to go. But let's get back to you, many of you who don't want to accept the terms of righteousness. You like religion. You love going to church. You love getting dressed up, put on your finest and everything, do your hair, maybe do your nails if you're a woman. Let's go to church. The choir sings, let's go to church. But you have no intention whatsoever of accepting the terms of righteousness. You go based on your terms, on your ideas. So when we talk about the tribulation and we talk about ATLAH and we talk about the land of the righteous, that there are those that accept the terms of righteousness, not religion. And Satan has figured this out. He says, I'll just give you religion. What do you want? Tell you what, to get men to join the Islamic religion, I'll tell them, men, you got 70 virgins. Lord have mercy. You ought to see the man raise his hand and say, I want to be a Muslim. 70 virgins. Woo, Lord. I want to be a Muslim. Forget about that Christianity stuff. I want to be a Muslim. You mean tell me I can have 70 women? Well, I'm going on the battlefield and get killed just so I can get to heaven and get them 70 women. Sex with 70 women. I mean, come on. You know what Jesus said about that incident, in case if they said Jesus is a good prophet, they got to now call him a good liar, which he is not. But Jesus says in heaven there'll be no marriage or given in marriage. So that's an outright contradiction. So anybody that says that Allah or the Muslims say that Jesus is a good prophet, even don't know what they're talking about, because Jesus immediately condemns that whole idea about 70 virgins. Jesus calls Islamic religion a lie, a falsehood, something that's not true. And if it were true, it would put heaven in contradiction with what most honorable people think in terms of just numerics. 70 women for one man? I mean, come on. Come on. So, but here, and why am I teaching this? Because I've been teaching you about predestination. I've been teaching you about righteousness. Righteousness, you hear me call. And yet many of you like religion. So you come to me for religion, but not for you do not under any circumstance plan to accept the terms of righteousness. You don't plan to do that. So therefore you keep your distance, but you love the teaching. You love the teaching. You love it. It's true. And it is a good teaching if I have to say so myself. I mean, if you didn't know the Bible, if you didn't learn the Bible in the Baptist church, which you will not, or even the Catholic church, we don't even let you have the Bible. But if you want to know the Bible, especially if you got a historical bent, if you like, the history, the romance of the Bible, if you will, the valiancy of the Bible, the adventurous, and it's an adventurous book of miracles, And you come here and I teach, but you have no plans whatsoever for accepting the terms of righteousness. God gonna kill you. Here's what he's gonna do to you. And it's gonna be justified. It's gonna be justified. Look at the ask you, did you hear? Yeah, I heard, but I decided I don't want to do it. It's gonna be justified. God gonna send you to hell. And from there to the lake of fire. Because hell itself is an entity that has to be disposed of in the ultimate end. He's going to send you to hell. He's going to send every Muslim to hell. They're going, I'm telling you. Catholics too. Mormons are going by the gross. Only the righteous shall see God. Only the righteous. And so Satan has set up a systematic teaching. I'll give you whatever religion you like. In fact, the Mormons are almost like, at one point, like the Muslims. The Mormons were allowed to have as many wives as they want. I don't know if they had 70. They didn't have to wait till they get to heaven or die on the battlefield. The Mormons, the Latter-day Saints as they call them, they're allowed to have as many wives as they want. Now they say that they stopped that practice, but that's what Joseph Smith did. Get a lot of people to join the Mormon organization. He said, all right, a Mormon man can have as many wives as Abraham had or Solomon, right? And so people join the Mormon religion. And so, almost like it's a good, if a recruitment tool, you want to get people recruited into Islam or into Mormonism, tell them you can have as many wives. It's a good recruitment tool. But it has nothing to do with righteousness or the tenets of righteousness. So we're in the tribulation. What does that mean? We're in a period of time where the gospel has been preached around the earth, and God is now in the process of dismantling everything he did in creation. Let's put it to you this way. Let me put it out where you can get it. God said to Adam, you could eat of every tree of the garden that's in the garden, except the tree that's in the midst of the garden, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Of that tree, I forbid you to eat of it. So Adam said, I'm good with that. Everything else is cool. But his wife, on the other hand, and Adam was ready to accept the tenets and the terms of righteousness. He was, no problem. I got that. But the devil comes along and says, not to Adam, but says to his wife, says, the reason why God don't want you eating of this tree is because the moment you do that, you're going to be as smart as he is. Oh, wait a minute. So you're not satisfied with what you got, right? You're not satisfied that Adam got dominion. He can say to the eagle, fly, and fly so high. He can say to the cow to move, and move, move, move. He can say to the water, stand still. And you got everything you need to ever eat. You got everything you left in sunshine. You got power over everything. You can name everything. Oh, but you're not satisfied with that. You want more. Oh, I see. Well, actually, I don't know if Adam really wanted more, but I think his wife wanted more. The devil told her, even though you got all of this dominion and power and this and that and life, eternity, you got all of that, but would you like to have a little bit more? Well, he said, well, what more can I have? Say, well, God's holding back on you. God says if you eat of this tree, you're going to die. That's not what's going to happen. Is that what's going to happen? Is you're going to be as smart as God. So Eve said, that sounds like a good idea. Let me tell Adam about that. First you ate and then you told Adam. And that's what people do. And that's why we're in the tribulation, is because people do not want to conform to the terms of righteousness. They want religion, of course. They'll even acknowledge God. No problem there. But the terms of righteousness, which is the terms that God gave to Adam, that he passed on to his wife Eve, they didn't want to adhere to that. They wanted something different or something more. So it depends on what religion, what denomination you are. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're Mormon, years ago, you were looking to have more than one wife. A lot of men like that idea, right? If you're Muslim, well, you got 70 virgins. That's a good place. I think I'll become a Muslim, Islam. Oh, we ain't know Jesus. We know Abraham is our father and everything, but we got something different from what Jesus is teaching. Wait a minute, now that don't make no sense, Muslim brother. Come on, my Muslim brother. You're saying Jesus is a good prophet, but yet you say that Allah is God. Jesus says he's Lord. Come on now, let's be clear about what we be clear about over here. Well, he's a good prophet, but Allah is God. It's okay. All right. I'm not mean all right because I'm agreeing with you, and then you say you got 70 virgins. Well, the problem is that conforming and accepting the terms of righteousness is what people don't do, and that's the only reason for the tribulation. Because if everybody accepted the terms of righteousness, then there'd be no need for God to wipe out humanity, which brings me to my point that I started 20 minutes ago, and that is this. ATLAH is the land of the righteous, the land where the people shall walk barefoot because the land is holy ground. Doesn't matter whether you're black, white, red, green, or chartreuse. If you're righteousness, if you've accepted the terms of righteousness, God has established a parcel of land for the righteous, 50,000 righteous men. God has accepted that, and that's what ATLAH is all about. And it's been predestinate, if you will, or predestined, if you must. And that's it. That was a whole lot more, obviously. But where are you? You know, you like religion. You say, well, I like his Pastor Manning. First of all, he's funny. This guy's funny dude, funny Pastor Manning. I just can't help that. That's something sometimes I tell jokes. When I'm not trying to tell a joke, people laugh. When I'm serious, people laugh. When I'm trying to tell a joke and be funny, people look at me like I got horns or something. Right? But people don't plan to accept the terms of, they don't plan under any to accept the terms of righteousness. All this righteousness, first of all, got to do Sabbath. I ain't going to nobody's church. I ain't giving up my Sunday church. I don't care what pastor. I like him. I love him, but I ain't giving up my Sunday. I go to church on Sunday. You got to cut me. And then after Sunday, we're going to have them collard greens and fried chicken down in the basement. Lord, no. Jesus just going to have to understand. I ain't giving up my Sunday. I don't care what Pastor Man said about that Sabbath. Oh, here's the other thing. Then he talks about that tithe. Lord have mercy. No, sir. And I'm on a fixed income anyway. I'm on fixed income. I ain't no way in the world I can give up 10% of my money. Ooh, Lord. You know, the other day I was teaching that, Elijah went to the widow of Zarephath's house up there in North Country, Samaria. And all she had was a little bit of meal in a barrel and a little bit of oil in a cruse. And the prophet said, I'll tell you what you do. Fix a cake for me first, and we'll see what God will do. And she did it, even though she was on a fixed income. So the prophet said, fix a cake for me first. The Lord set me up here to talk to you. So she did it. Then she looked back in her barrel. And the Bible said her meal did not waste and her oil did not fail. There was another woman, Elisha's protege, went to a woman's house. She was in debt up to the wazoo. And Elisha told her, well, what you got? She said, all I got is a pot of oil. And 2 Kings chapter 4, she said, all I got is a pot of oil. What the prophet said to her, he said, well, now that's all you got and you're in debt? People say, okay, I would tithe. Well, I got to get out of debt first. My car payment, my car note is due, my phone note is due, and I would love to tithe, but I'm in my debt. I got to pay and my rent past due 2 months. So this woman was in debt. Her husband died. So the prophet said to her, what you got? She said, all I got is this pot of oil, and I can't give none of this to nobody. I got. So the prophet said, well, go borrow some vessels from some of your neighbors and borrow out a few. Then he told her, take the pot, put oil and pour it in the pot, in the vessels rather, and he gets that filling up vessels, and she filled up about 70 different vessels. And still her pot did not run dry. And that's what happens when you accept the terms of righteousness. But people are not going to do that. So therefore, God's response is that I'm going to kill all of y'all. I'm going to send you to hell. There are going to be wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places. I'm going to do it because you will not accept the terms of righteousness. Now, you've heard what the terms are. You made a decision that you're not going to accept them. All right? The Catholics are starting Ash Wednesday. Watch if you look, you mark this day. Look out your window. See, in the vicinity of any Catholic, you don't see them running around there with some ashes on their foreheads. I mean, we've understood that process. I think from a theological perspective, I've taught it here at the church. So what do the Catholics do on Ash Wednesday? Well, from here to Easter, they decide to give up something. All right? Very few of them give up sexual intercourse. They might give up coffee. And they do it for like 2-3 days. They say, what the heck? Take that. They wash the ash off their head and start drinking coffee again. You ought to see these Catholics. They are something to behold, I swear. If you want to see some religious people, watch these Catholic people. They are something to behold. I thought the Baptist people were bad. The Catholic got it. Anyway. Plus they got these rosary beads. And there's a principle behind the rosary beads. I think it's important that, learning the scriptures and everything. But they say going to give up something. But ask a Catholic, do you tithe? Tithe? What tithe is that? I don't know no tithing. I don't know if I'll be preaching about this on Saturday about I am Noah. But I wanted to give you an idea of what ATLAH is. It is the land of the righteous, not the land of the white man or the so-called black man or the Jew, while they're all wonderfully invited. It is the land of the righteous, and God is predestined, and I'm his messenger. It's the terms of the Bible from the days of Adam to the days of John the Revelator is strictly and always has been and always will be righteousness. Jesus told John the Baptizer, it's our duty to fulfill all righteousness, not the Baptists or the Catholic or the Mormons or the Greek Orthodox or the whatever. He told it's our job to feel righteous, the job of righteousness. Blessed are ye when you're persecuted for righteousness' sake. He says, when I come back, I'm going to gather the righteous on one side and the wicked on the other. It's never been about denominations. So the summation here, as I go to break, is that the explanation why the end of humanity does not end with a beautiful explosion and a beautiful conference of the whole world singing while Jesus returns. And the whole world is full of peace and brotherly love, and everybody's fed and everybody's doing well and everybody's on one accord. That is not what Jesus prophesied will be the end of humanity. What he prophesies is the end of humanity is that he's going to kill off most people on the planet except for just a few who are the righteous. Because everybody else is religious, but they refuse to accept the terms of righteousness. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And Jesus can't convince them to do it. But as long as they've heard that they should have, then he's justified for sending them to hell. I'm going to take a break. Let me say a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we love you. We thank you. We magnify your name. You're worthy to be praised. And thank you for visiting us today by way of your Holy Ghost. And thank you for those who have accepted the terms of righteousness of this ministry. They accepted this ministry and its teaching of the terms of righteousness as it comes directly from the Bible and not from some man's ideals. Thank you for them. And thank you for those that have stood with me as I've declared righteousness when I could have turned to riches. Many of the churches preach riches, and riches. Private jets, Rolls Royce, big homes. Riches they preach, riches they preach, riches they preach. But ATLAH is about righteousness. Righteousness. The Muslims really need prayer. I mean, they're double-minded. They say that Jesus is a good prophet, yet everything that Jesus said condemns the very existence of the idea of being a Muslim. It's preposterous. It doesn't even meet mathematical understanding that one man can have 70 women. It's ridiculous. It's pie in the sky. And I don't want to profane this prayer meeting, Lord Jesus, in any possible way. But the Muslim has this doctrine of sex in the sky. Now, I could say something else rather than pie in the sky. But that's what the Muslim preach. Pie in the sky. All you got to do is die, and you got pie in the sky. Lord, have mercy on humanity. How did we ever get so far away from the truth? Jesus, I thank you for giving me breath, and I thank you for opening up the doors of ATLAH for people to come out of that wretchedness, out of that folly and foolishness, and come home to righteousness and ATLAH. And in your name, Jesus, I pray. Hallelujah and amen. I'll be right back, everybody.
And God let me hear the Honorable James David Manning on the radio. And he was at 135th and 5th Avenue preaching there. And when the drug guys said, you can't preach here, you're on our territory, we're going to kill you. He said, no, God told me to come here and preach, and I'm going to preach. And somebody called the captain, and he came and said, take your church and your people and go back. Take your people and go back to your church. We don't want no bloodshed. He said, there will be no bloodshed. God told me to come here and preach, and I'm going to preach. I said, oh, God, that's my man. I called my sister, come and hear this man. Come hear this man. She said, who is it? I said, I don't know. But in my heart, I knew he knew the truth. So I thank and praise God for being in this house.
This is symbolic. It's where Jesus was baptized. It's where John baptized. And so this is not a rebaptism. It's just a symbolic, if you will, act of what we're going to do, being in the water at the place where Jesus was baptized. And what I'd like to do is to baptize today that we would come to terms with the understanding of what God is calling for in righteousness. He's not calling for prosperity. He isn't calling for culturalism. God is calling for righteousness. If we would commit ourselves to fulfill all righteousness, and God has calls us to be persecuted for righteousness' sake, as John was persecuted for righteousness, and so Jesus. I got to tell you that I'll never forget this experience of actually stepping in the water where Jesus were baptized and where John has baptized so many people. This is such a historic and a powerful, powerful sight. Just to touch the water was so critical. And I'm glad that people got baptized to have that experience. It was a safe experience and a great experience. I'm not even going to change my clothes. I want to just stay in baptism mode until I get back to the hotel. So that's what I want to say. All right.
This has been live from the Jordan River. God bless you all. Peace.
Righteousness. Boom, chakalaka goes right there.
It isn't just about making bent legs straight. It's about enabling these children to re-enter society. Someday they can marry, they can get a job, they can work. It really, truly gives them their life back.
Their medical photos that we take kind of show it all. Their pre-op picture, none of them are smiling and they all look really scared. And then in their post-op picture, they have the biggest smiles on and they're so happy. I mean, it's only 2 pictures, but you can see that a journey has happened.
They never even dared to dream before, and now suddenly it's reality that they can dream and that these dreams could actually come true.
So ATLAH is the land of the predestinate. And predestined, to use a more modern term. Paul never used predestined, he used the term predestinate. ATLAH is the name that's given to the community formerly known as Harlem here in New York City, which at one point was understood to be the flagship of the Hamite people. They were referred to as Negro or black or colored, and they all called themselves African Americans, one or the other. They're Hamites, that's who they are. But God has chosen this land, and he's predestined this land to be the home of the righteous. And because righteousness is so contemptible as an idea of so many people who would rather have riches and other kinds of, if you will, religious ideas. They'd rather have religion rather than righteousness. But he settled this land, and I'm here as his messenger, preaching it here in the midst of extreme wickedness. But at any rate, I think it's important for us to understand that the predestinate, as we stated earlier, are those who before they were born of their mother's womb, they were predestined to be righteous and to carry the burden of the holy and the righteous. Because the other matter is that man that's born of a woman is born in sin and shapen in iniquity. Now, he can carry the burden of holiness and righteousness, but after birth, he must be anointed. But even there, in order to enter the kingdom of God, according to the strict teachings of Jesus, the very strict teachings of success for Jesus, is that he must be born again. Because born of a woman, he's born in sin and shapen in iniquity. Therefore, cannot respectfully, honestly carry the burden of the holy and the righteous. Now, he can be religious all day long, and many people are. Most people on the planet are religious of something, whether they be Buddhists, or whether they be Hindu, whether they be Muslims, or whether they be Catholics. Most people on planet Earth have some sort of religion, and even those who call themselves atheists call that a religion as well. So religion is very popular, but righteousness has very little adherence. Very little people subscribe to righteousness. The devil's promoted religion. But the predestined are those that Jesus said, if you were born of a woman, you can be anointed and thusly have the power to carry the holy and the righteous. But even that, you must be born again before you can see the kingdom of God. And Nicodemus inquired, what do you mean, go back in your mother's womb? No, if you do that and you come back out again, you're still coming back out into a sin-filled world of sin and iniquity. So ATLAH has been prophesied for those, the people that have this designation of predestinate needs a capital city, if you will, or need a promised land, as did the Jews were of Israel. And ATLAH is that promised land of the predestined, or the predestined. And we wanted to try to help make that clear to you as we move along. And one of the things that we were teaching early in this early segment was about the fact that Jesus does not prophesy a rosy and beautiful, loving outcome of humanity. Jesus prophesies that the outcome of humanity is going to be more wicked than more wretched rather, than people will be more wicked, but the outcome of humanity is going to be more wretched than anything you have ever seen or ever heard of, ever dreamed of. I'm going to ask the engineer to bring up Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, where Jesus prophesies what the ultimate end of humanity is going to be, and it is not going to be what you would think it should be. So, Mr. Engineer, if you could take me there to Matthew 24, and let's just start reading here at verse 1. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another, there shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? There are three questions there. And Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. In other words, he said, now, don't get into this religion thing. For many shall come. Kenneth Copeland will come. Joel Osteen will come. Billy Graham, Franklin Graham will come. And will say that Jesus is the Christ. But they're deceivers. And many people will be deceived. And he said, you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Since you be not troubled, for all these things going to come to pass, but the end is not yet. And there shall rise nation against kingdom, and nation against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famine, pestilence, and earthquakes, and divers places. So all these are the beginnings of sorrow, and Trump is the beginning of the tribulation. Now, I'm going to ask the engineer if he will take me down to verse 14 real quick. I want to see... And it says, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. In other words, that Jesus is not going to blame anybody or condemn anybody who has not heard the gospel. And now with the internet and with social media, with television, broadcast, books and publishing in the printing press. The gospel is being preached even in some of the most remote places on planet Earth. Now, the gospel is being preached. And once that, while we're going through the tribulation itself will be manifested by when the gospel has been heard by every ear, whether they received it or not, then the end shall come, Jesus said. But in verse 37 of Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, Jesus outlines this. He says, but when the tribulation happens and people are not going to pay attention to it, they are not going to pay any attention to it, they are not going to note it. I've said with the last 7 days of the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, you've not heard one person on television say tribulation or Jesus or prophecy. They just keep talking that same old talk, ignoring the words of Jesus. But Jesus said that that's how it's going to be. The people who have not been predestined and who do not listen to the predestined, who do not want to conform to the terms of righteousness, will not hear. And as it was in the days of Noah so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and nominating Supreme Court judges and having elections and getting married until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And they knew not until the flood came and took them all away. And so shall also be the coming of the Son of Man be. Thank you, Mr. Engineer. So what Jesus is effectively saying here is that, no matter how effective I may be as a preacher, if you've not been predestined, you're not going to hear. You're going to continue having party hardy, having a good time. You're not going to hear if you've not been selected by God. And that's just that. That's just plain and simple interpretation. And Jesus, most people agree that the flood killed most people except the 8 souls with Noah. And in that day, the ark was the place of righteousness. Everybody gathered in the ark, and they were protected from the flood. Everybody who wasn't in the ark died. Today is ATLAH, not the ark, but today is ATLAH, the land where the people shall walk barefoot because the land is holy ground. Now, to be sure, as the tribulation days advance, there'll be many people who still will not have come to ATLAH as of yet. But those that have given themselves and submitted themselves to the terms of righteousness and become members of ATLAH will be saved no matter where they are. But the ark was the ark of righteousness that Noah and his family were able to get in and to avoid the perils of the flood. But the issue here that is, as we started out with, is that why is it that this beautiful Savior of ours, Jesus, his loving teachings that he has done, his shedding of his blood of sacrifice, why is it that humanity will reject this and cause this loving Jesus to have to come and kill everybody that's living at a particular time and everybody else that have died and rejected the terms of righteousness, he's going to send them to hell. And from hell, he's going to send them to the lake of fire. Why is it that humanity is so adverse to righteousness? Why is it? Well, the answer is because Satan has given them religion. He's given them the Baptist church. He's given them the Catholic church. He's given them Muslim. That's why. And they think that their religion is just as good as righteousness. And what's more, that they are of the mindset that they're right in what they're doing and that somehow righteousness is not necessary. It isn't even required. But Jesus told John the Baptizer, it's required of us to fulfill all righteousness. Don't you ever forget that, John. So people are going to reject righteousness for religions, whether it be the Muslims, whether it be the Mormons, whether it be the Quakers, whether it be the, whoever. And so it will be. But I'm here as the Lord's servant. I'm here preaching righteousness in the vision of ATLAH. I'll have more to say as the days go on. What are you going to do? You're going to wait for the time to come where Jesus will say, but I sent my servant to you, and you didn't hear him. And when you rejected my servant and the terms of righteousness, it wasn't James David Manning that you were rejecting. It wasn't ATLAH that you were rejecting. It was me that you were rejecting. All right, everybody, I'm going to take you to the top of the hour.
Strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk. Let me walk close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Through this world of toils and snares, if I falter, Lord, who cares? Who but thee my burdens share? None but thee, dear Lord, none but thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Close to thee, let it be, dear Lord, let it be. When my feeble life is o'er, time for me won't be no more. Guide me gently, safely, oh, to thy kingdom shore, to thy shore. Oh, just a closer walk with thee. Oh, granted, Jesus is my plea. Oh, daily walking close to thee. Oh, yeah, let it be. Dear Lord, let it be. Oh, just a closer walk with thee.
will make the darkness light before thee, and whatever's wrong I'll right before thee. Your needs I will supply before thee, and those high places I'll bring them down. I will make the darkness light before thee. Whatever's wrong I'll right before thee. Your battles I will fight before thee, and those high places I'll bring them down. When thou walkest the way, I'll lead thee, and from the fatness of the land I'll feed thee. A mansion in the sky I'll deed thee, and all those high places I'll bring them down. I will make the darkness light before thee. I'll make the crooked straight before thee. I'll spread my wings protecting o'er thee, and those high places I'll bring them down. Although Satan in his rage would tear thee, and all his winning arts would snare thee, but down to thine old age I'll bear thee, and those high places I'll bring them down. When thou walkest the way, I'll lead thee, and from the fatness of this land I'll feed thee. A mansion in the sky I'll deed thee, and all those high places I'll bring them down. When thou walkest the way, I'll lead thee, and from the fatness of the land I will feed thee. Oh, a mansion in the sky I'll deed thee, and all those high places, oh, your high places.
I'm the Lord's servant. I'm asking now is to give truth a chance. All I've ever told anybody is the truth. Now, just because you didn't understand it doesn't mean it's not true. And I'm asking people to give truth a chance.
All around you hear the lies being told from the top. Every time you turn around, it just don't seem to stop. When you're ready to move far beyond that same old dance, All you gotta do is listen, yeah, and give truth a chance.
Give truth a chance.
Everybody,
Give truth a chance.
come on and sing it.
Give truth a chance. Give truth a chance.
Welcome, everybody, to the Manning Report. I am Manning, the quintessential American, broadcasting from our studio located in our church building. Pardon me. And our church building is located in the community formerly known as Harlem, but God Almighty has changed the name of this community to ATLAH, the land where the people shall walk barefoot, because the land is holy ground. How is everybody doing in your part of the world? Brother Munoz lives in San Bernardino, California. I couldn't figure that out yesterday. Yeah, I forgot. Brother Davis lives in Inglewood, which is in Los Angeles. And that's all the way across the country parallel to Sister Angela Kane, who lives in South Carolina. I don't know whether it's like in any of these parts of the world. And I got a report from Brother Eric Miller that the temperature was up in the 50s the other day out there in Indianapolis, Indiana. Seattle, Washington, where Brother Amen Springfield resides. Seattle, Washington, the weather out there is kind of funny. I'd planned to drive to Seattle and then go to drive through Canada into Alaska. And I might do that at some point in time. That's a long drive. But, if you have a couple of months to get it done, it's something that can be done. At any rate, everybody, I want to remind you that, of course, Joe Biden, gave his State of the Union address last night with Camelback Ain't Black Harris sitting behind him on his right shoulder. And on his left was San Francisco Nancy Fancy Pelosi. The two women, as Joe Biden gave his State of the Union address. And I want to make mention of that we are in the tribulation. Now, that's something that he'll never mention. A word probably will never come out of his mouth, or any references to the biblical teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ, though he declares himself to be a Catholic. But I was taken back by his message last night with the fact that we are in a global war now, with what Russia has done in Ukraine, and it's only going to get worse going forward, that he didn't spend as much time talking about, getting the world ready for the ravages that are coming as a result of Russia moving into Ukraine. And then I think one of the things he said, well, Russian planes will not be able to fly over U.S. airspace. Well, what else is new? But beyond that, there's nothing he said. He congratulated all the European partners of France and even gave a special shout out to Switzerland for leaving a stance of neutrality and placing sanctions on the Russian ruble and the Russian oligarchs. What he did do, however, I thought was a little bit of a wolf ticket. That is to say, talking loud and saying nothing, like a dull knife, just ain't cutting. You talking loud and saying nothing. When he said that they're going to go after all the oligarchs of Russia, and about 40 of them, going to go after their yachts, going to go after their private condos and houses in Miami and in London and every place. They're going to go seize them. All right, okay. So, I thought that was a bit of selling wolf tickets as he stood there in the well last night, giving his State of the Union speech. By the way, the first of his career of such a speech. But I was disappointed that he didn't inform the world that we're getting ready to go into some difficult time, whether they believe the tribulation or not. Putin is nobody to be played with. Of course, he would never call him the beast. He would never refer to Russia as Gog. That's beyond his capability of understanding. We understand that. We don't expect that. But just on a general understanding about humanity from World War I to World War II and all other conflicts, that the world is at war. Now, America and Europe and the West can say, well, we're not firing any bullets at Russia, but you are firing some very definite sanctions that can cause bread lines, hunger, closing of hospitals, and death in Russia. What? Here, let me tell you, can I talk to you? Can I come up? Let me say something to you. Somehow or another, because we're not placing any soldiers in Ukraine, That's not true. There are at least 7, 8 to 10,000 of American soldiers in disguise in Ukraine right now wearing, I believe, that's what I believe, my assessment, if you don't mind. I believe that. Doesn't have to be true. I believe that you have at least 10,000 soldiers wearing Ukrainian uniform. But having said that, sanctions, when you cut off a person's money supply, and you cut them off from the rest of the world, that's warfare. That's those are fighting words, and so people are going to die in Russia and suffocate and suffer in Russia. So we are at war. The whole world is at war. Now, Vladimir Putin, I'm sure he anticipated all of this before he made his move onto the borders of the Ukraine. So he understands there are going to be casualties. In every war, there are casualties. You can't have them without casualty. But I'm sure Putin understands that Russia's going to have to bite the bullet, for going in to take Ukraine. Is it worth it? I'm not for Russia. Let's be clear. I mean, all these people on Fox News and conservatives and Tribulation Donald Trump and everybody cheering on Russia. I'm not for Russia. But I'm not for Ukraine either. I'm not. I'm an American. But I'm not for Ukraine. I understand I'm not against Ukraine. I'm not against them. I see the suffering that they're going through, etc. I understand that. It's horrible. It's heart-wrenching watching what's going on over there in Ukraine. But I'm not taking sides in it. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm the Lord's servant. I would that they would all come to Jesus. But having said that, I thought that Biden's speech was poor. If you can give it a grade from from A to D, I'd give it an F. And then after that, he went pouring in a whole pack of things for the next 50 minutes that he couldn't get in the Buy Back Better program that was completely resoundingly defeated by Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema, by two Democrats who just said, you ain't going with this, Joe. We ain't going for it. All this multiple spending that you're doing and a whole lot of other things that you want to get done. No. So it died on the vine. So last night he tried to revive it part by part. And I got bored listening to him, quite frankly. I think he got choked up a couple of times listening to it as well. I said there's some things he said. I think about prescription medicine. I think it's just prescription medicine is just too damn high in America. It don't make no sense that the drug manufacturers can charge you the amount of money that you can charge. And you brought that little boy down there from Virginia who needs insulin every day, $300 a day worth of insulin, and that don't make no sense when you can get it for $10 a day every place else on the planet. But drug manufacturers jump up and down and say, we can't do research and we don't charge a whole lot of money. That's a lie. They're just greedy, which brings me to another subject that, Americans and greedy and politicians in particular and businesses and the poor people barely survive in America amid all the greed and corporations. Then he had this guy who's going to be doing this microchips, some guy named Ezel or whatever his name was, puny looking little old guy. Bought up a large slate of land 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, and is going to invest $100 billion in a microchip plant just outside of Columbus, Ohio, and they got plenty of money. Listen, Vladimir Putin had put together $630 billion in a foreign bank as a rainy day, fund to be able to fund his war. Well, the West have put a sanction on that, put a freeze on that money, so Putin can't get access to his $630 billion. This guy gonna put $100 billion out there in Ohio to build microchips. Ain't gonna pay an average salary of $135,000 per person who works in that factory out there. I think I'm moving to Ohio. Anyway. But I thought the speech was poor. I got tired of looking at Camelback Ain't Black Harris because Joe Biden don't like her. I don't think he likes her. I think he's had enough of her. Jim Clyburn was sitting there like he was in a wheelchair. Everybody everybody was upstanding last night and applauding except Jim Clyburn. And this is just my opinion. It doesn't have to be true, so don't throw me off of Facebook or YouTube or anybody. But I think Jim Clyburn and I think Kamala, they call her Kamala. I call her Camelback Ain't Black Harris. I think she talked sweet nothings into the ear of Jim Clyburn to convince Jim Clyburn to convince Joe Biden to have us vice president. That isn't working out too good. It's not working out too good. So he didn't stand last night. I said, whoa. It's one thing when the Republicans, I said, the McCarthy don't stand, these other people, these Republicans, Mitch McConnell and all that other crowd, Dan Scalise, if they don't stand and applaud when Biden is speaking, well, you understand that. They're Republicans. They're supposed to be adversaries. But Jim Clyburn didn't stand last night. So, whoa, what's this? Maybe something's in the wash we don't know about. But I'm going to wrap all this up. But I thought that he left the world in a quandary because he should have told us, he should have prepared the world for, we get ready to go through some very difficult times here in America. They're going through some difficult times in Ukraine. They're going to go through some difficult times in Europe. It's going to get really difficult come next winter in Europe. And European tourism, Europe makes a lot of money off of tourism. They don't, they in Germany they manufacture these Mercedes-Benz and everything. And over there in Italy, they sell a lot of suits, but they make a lot of money off of tourism. Paris, France makes a lot of money off of tourism, and so does England. They make a lot of suits and everything and sell a lot of, gin from England. But they make a lot of money off of tourism and students. All that's going to end. And America makes a lot of money, especially New York, off of tourists as well. That's going to end this summer, too. It's going to be a summer from hell, as I told you before. And Biden, he's standing there, look like he's, like a little, he looks like a scale fish to me, a red snapper. That's what, Biden does. Then he wear them little tight pants, like tight around the ankles, like he, man with a big foot couldn't get his pants up, couldn't get his feet all the way down. So tight. Why does he do that? A little tight around his legs and everything. And he's skinny as a rail, I like to complain about everybody. If this his best friend, why are you talking about the man's attire? Why don't you just talk about his policy? Well, I've done that. I think his attire speaks about his policies too, as well, and I have a right to do that. At any rate, he didn't. I thought as well. I was disappointed that he didn't offer more. He's supposed to be, he's supposed to be Uncle Joe. Mr. Sympathetic Joe Biden. He's so sympathetic. He understands his son, Beau Biden, died. Yeah, I mean, I'm not mocking I'm not mocking the death of his son, mind you. But he's supposed to be so empathetic, right? He understands. He lost his wife in a car accident. All right, okay. I express my condolences there. But the people over there in Ukraine are dying by the gross. He didn't express no sympathy there. I didn't hear anybody talking about it's winter and they standing out in these lines trying to get into Poland, Moldova, and trying to get in these other nations. And these freezing cold, standing out there for 3 days. Young women having to take their babies and leave their husbands to fight. I didn't hear none of those sympathy towards that. So I'm wondering if he just, when he was in the well last night, he didn't get into that the way I thought he should have gotten into it, And Nancy Pelosi, I don't know what she was doing behind him, turning over papers and everything. I think something's wrong with her anyway, by the way. You ever see it? I'm sorry. Anyway, everybody, I'm James Evan Manning. I give Biden an F for that speech last night. And I pray, I'll tell you what, I pray for the people of Ukraine. How's that? So you think I'm insensitive myself? No, I pray for the Ukrainian people. I do. I pray they find Jesus. That's what I pray. I'll be right back. Let me just say this. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not a Democrat. Definitely ain't that. I'm not a Republican. Sure enough, stomped on ain't that. I'm not a liberal. Ain't gonna never be. And I'm not a conservative. I'm not that. I'm not a red boy or a blue boy. I'm the Lord's servant. Listen, I'm not here in support of Joe Biden and Camelback ain't Black Harris. The last thing on the planet Earth would be I'd be supporting them. I'm not. I don't have anything kind to say about them. I'm not here in support of Trump or any of the Trump supporters. I'm the Lord's servant. I ain't on nobody's side. I'm on the Lord's side. Let's be clear. All right, they'll be calling me a Biden supporter and I done flipped the wig and this, that, and the other. I did endorse Trump. I'll admit that. I did, but not now. Over the years, we have served more than 1 million meals to hungry bellies and hungry people here in the Harlem community. And I wanted you to be able to see that. I want you to see our involvement with youth, our summer youth programs, our courtyard being used as a place where children can be safe, guarded, and protected as they have their miniature swimming pools, and a safe place for children to eat that is guarded, that is protected by our own sense of security, and the wholesome and fresh meals that we serve. We wanted you to be able to see the mission of this church. And we've been doing this for years. Just recently, one of our members, more than a 30-year member of this church, but it hasn't, not one that, that you would probably find as members of some other churches with their nose stuck up in the air. But her father is now close to death or very sick in the state of South Carolina. And I said to her, well, because she doesn't have money, I said, we will buy you a bus ticket, a round trip bus or train ticket for you to travel to South Carolina to be with your father in this time of pandemic. There's very little funding around. There's sickness everywhere. And the thing that just blew me away was she said, as she was talking to Elizabeth, she said, but how are you going to do that? To pay for me a round trip ticket to travel and give me expense money? And because Pastor Manning has to feed the children, he has to educate the children, he has to buy school supplies for them, he has to pick them up in the mornings and take them back, and then he's got the ministry he has to take care of, all the bills of running the church, of keeping a major house like our house operational, keep the lights on, how are you going to be able to do that? And she was almost reluctant to take the money because she felt that it would be better served by feeding the children. We gave it to her anyway. But we want you to know that we do a work in this community. There have been a lot of lies told on us. And it's almost unimaginable why some of the people that have lied on us. But I can tell you, behind all of it is the LGBTQ community. They don't want us to be successful, but we are, and we're going to continue to be successful in serving the meals that we're serving and serving the people that we are. And the LGBTQ community will not take us down. They are not going to take our church. Yet they've defamed us. They've written ugly newspaper articles about us. They've marched against us. They've done a whole lot of ugly things. But you see what we have done, and that's not even the half of our service to children and to the needy in terms of our homeless shelters and the things that we've done over the years. And we will continue. And probably the lies and the smears and the ugly newspaper articles and the wicked spirits and the so-called I ain't for the black man, that is not going to go away. I don't expect it to go away. I don't. But I do tell you this, that we will succeed against all of that, for God is with us and I am his servant. All right, so what is the answer for the Ukrainians and Zelensky, their fate? Where's all this going to go? How's it going to all end? Everybody's watching the valiancy of the Ukrainian people, their dedication, their commitment, that the citizens of Ukraine, the 42 million people of Ukraine, for the most part, that have taken up arms to assist in the actual military of Ukraine, while nearly 1 million Ukrainians have, jumped ship and left the country. But you got another 40 million Ukrainians there, and a large number of them, from young men to old women, have picked up shotguns and rifles and Molotov cocktails, and they've determined that they're going to fight the Russians. I was tuned in early this morning to discover that a large number of Ukrainians had put up a human roadblock in front of the tanks headed towards one of the nuclear reactors. If you remember, I taught the other day that the separatists could fire a bomb into that nuclear reactor and cause nuclear fallout to happen all over the area of Ukraine, especially on the East Coast, where it would not affect Russia or Belarus. which would be an ideal target, which would make a large part of Ukraine radioactive and deadly. But they were standing on a bridge with trucks and everything to block off the tanks from getting to that nuclear reactor. And remember, I'm the one who gave that idea to, well, I don't know if I gave the idea to them. I don't want the FBI and CIA to come arrest me. But, I foretold that was one of their weapons of their, they have some pawns in the game, but they also have options in the game of war. But the thing I want to say now is that, which I want you to consider about Ukrainians who are now, dropping Molotov cocktails out of apartment windows onto tanks, and who are firing from, park benches and behind parked cars around Kiev and some of the outlying cities, Kharkiv as well. The problem, that's a great and a noble, and it's just a heart-wrenching story about the bravery of these Ukrainian people. And they're all standing, waving their flags, saying, we're going to defend Mother Ukraine. That's brave, powerful, and awesome. But the other side of that, if you don't mind my saying so, and not that I'm in any way condemning anybody or that I'm against or for somebody, I'm just a quintessential American trying to give you the report of what I see going on in Ukraine. And that is this. If you're going to start dropping Molotov cocktails out of apartment building windows, don't be surprised if a tank fires at that window from which that Molotov cocktail came. You can say it's a civilian, it's not a military installation. Once you start dropping Molotov cocktails or firing rifles out of windows of high-rise buildings, it's a military institution. It may not have been prior to that, but once you start using it to fire on foreign soldiers, then the soldiers have a right to fire back. And so we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see, the Muslims love to build their military installations around baby milk factories and hospitals. The Muslim, the Al-Qaeda boys, Taliban boys, they love to set up their military installation, their big guns around a children's hospital. So they can say, the Americans bombed the children's hospital, bombed my foot. You were shooting from the basement of that hospital, and everybody knows it. So but that's the problem here. What's going on there in Ukraine, that, you're going to open up the Ukrainian forces. The other thing I think is that the resistance program, I think, is good. But then somebody needs to tell everybody that we're in the tribulation. They won't let me get out on the air anymore. They figure that I'm a danger to humanity. With the truth I tell, they don't want it, so they won't let me get out on the air anymore. But somebody needs to start telling people, those Ukrainians, that we're in the tribulation, and try to figure out what's their role, and start looking towards to Jesus if they can. But the battle is going to only get more intense, rather, I should say, with respect to civilian fighting, and I commend them for doing so. I think that kind of bravery, it really is heartwarming, and were there some time afterwards to write the history about this, it would make for a very powerful story that the Ukrainian people stood up to the bear, to Gog. And can I just slip this one in on you? I don't know whether you're going to go for it or not. And, I think that one of the weapons that Joe Biden should have used last night, first of all, and you can say this is overreach, or you can say it's, I don't know what you can say it, but I think Joe Biden needs to talk to me. You say, Pastor, who do you think you are? Well, I'm the Lord's servant, first of all. And in the Bible, when Jehoshaphat got ready with Ahab to go against, the Philistines in battle, there were 400 prophets around Jehoshaphat telling him, yeah, go up, God's going to give you the battle. Right? And Jehoshaphat said, all these guys are singing the same old tune, the same old song. Is there anybody else here? And somebody said, yeah, there's another prophet, but nobody likes him. His name is Micaiah. Everybody hates him because he ain't never got no good news for us. So they said, Jehoshaphat said, well, go get this guy Micaiah. Let's see what he got to say. So one of the false prophets ran up on him, and found Micaiah. Said, Micaiah, Jehoshaphat the king want to know whether they should go up to battle or not, whether they should go to battle with Ukraine or Russia or not. So Jehoshaphat said, I can tell you right now, no. So see what we said about you. You ain't never with us. Everybody else, there's 400 other prophets say, yeah, we're going to win the war. And then you go by yourself, Micaiah, going to say, no, we ain't going to win the war. Micaiah said, well, we won't. So they brought him to Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat said, he told Jehoshaphat, you can go up if you want. I can tell you that, God ain't with you. And everybody started against, we don't like, that's what he said, Micaiah, that's why they don't like you. And you can say, man, and that's why we don't like you. But let me tell you, King Joe Biden need to talk to me. And maybe there'll be a couple other people that'll hear this. They'll look at it and they'll say, Manning, you know, you're not really all that. We like you and everything, Manning. We like your courage and everything, but you're not really all that. I mean, Joe Biden don't need to talk to you. See? You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? But he does. Biden needs to talk to me. Remember, they didn't like Micaiah either. They didn't think very much of him. And the reason why they didn't like Micaiah, because Micaiah was never trying to please them or tell them what they want to hear. He told them what thus saith the Lord. And Biden ought to be telling everybody we're in the tribulation. It's what he ought to be telling people. He ought to be telling people that Russia is Gog and that Putin is the beast from the Bible. That's what Biden should have been saying last night from the well of the chamber of the House of Representatives. That's what he should have been saying. But he ain't got nobody around in there would tell him to say something like that. But if he had said that last night, imagine if Biden had said that, if Joe Biden would have got up and said, Russia is Gog according to Revelation chapter 20, verse 8, and Biden and Putin is the beast according to Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 2, and we are in the tribulation, and the east has risen up against the west, and the west need to fall down on our knees in prayer. What we need to do. Imagine if he said that last night. Imagine if he had said something like that last night. What's wrong with it? I ask you, what would be wrong with him saying that? Well, it ain't true. Are you calling the Bible a liar? Well, the Bible's in there, but it ain't about Russia, it ain't about, well, then who is it about then? Well, I don't know, but it ain't about that. Well, if you don't know, then you don't know what it ain't. What you don't know, what you don't know, you don't know. Anyway, so Biden needs to talk. He said, man, you have got some kind of nerve. First you said that Pharaoh, Eric Adams down there, the mayor of New York City, needs to talk to you. He does. And now you're saying the president of the United States needs to talk to you. Well, he should. You don't have to do what I said, but I think you ought to have somebody other than the 400 prophets that are all singing the same song. You ought to have another point of view. In a biblical point of view, I mean, God does have a word. All wise men always ask, is there any word from the Lord? That's what Jehoshaphat asked. Imagine if Joe Biden had stepped in that well last night and said, is there any word from the Lord regarding where we are in this tribulation period? I raised my hand and said, yes, there is. So imagine what would be happening in the world today. The world would be on a track of righteousness, of power. If Joe Biden had just said last night, is there any word from the Lord? If he just said that. And if Zelensky, who met with Matthew Chance of CNN in his bunker with his military outfit on, and I'm not against Zelensky either. Imagine if Zelensky would have said, is there a prophet in the land? Is there a word from the Lord? Our nation is under siege. We're facing the beast. We wouldn't say that. But is there any prophetic word from the Lord regarding this time in which we find, if Zelensky had said that on CNN, is there any word from the Lord? Not from the United Nations, not from NATO, not from Europe, not from the European Union, not from Biden, but is there any word from the Lord? If Zelensky had said that. That would have made Vladimir Putin pee in his pants if he said, oh, Lord, have mercy. Woo! Vladimir Putin would have been afraid out there if Zelensky would ever ask that. Or Biden would ask it. But they're not going to do it. And you're not going to help them. You're not going to help them. But that's what they need to do. I'm not for either one of these people. I'm not for Biden. I'm not for Zelensky. I'm not for Putin. I ain't for none of them. I'm the Lord's servant. And I don't want you to ever forget that. This is symbolic. It's where Jesus was baptized. It's where John baptized. And so this is not a rebaptism. It's just a symbolic, if you will, act of what we're going to do, being in the water at the place where Jesus was baptized. And what I'd like to do is to baptize today that we would come to terms with the understanding of what God is calling for in righteousness. He's not calling for prosperity. He isn't calling for culturalism. God is calling for righteousness. If we would commit ourselves to fulfill all righteousness, and God has calls us to be persecuted for righteousness' sake, as John was persecuted for righteousness, and so Jesus. I got to tell you that I'll never forget this experience of actually stepping in the water where Jesus were baptized and where John has baptized so many people. This is such a historic and a powerful, powerful sight. Just to touch the water was so critical. And I'm glad that people got baptized to have that experience. It was a safe experience and a great experience. I'm not even going to change my clothes. I want to just stay in baptism mode until I get back to the hotel. So that's what I want to say. All right.
This has been live from the Jordan River. God bless you all. Peace.
Righteousness. Boom, chakalaka goes right there.
In the early days of Moses going down into Egypt to declare before Pharaoh, let my people go, and as Pharaoh became obstinate, hard-hearted, and disrespectful and contemptible to God's servant Moses, Moses then proclaimed that the Nile River, which was the source of life, the artery of life in Egypt, will be turned to blood, meaning that a river of blood does not produce fish or enjoyment or a place where you can go swim, doesn't produce the silt to produce the crops that the Nile River was famous for. It became a river of blood. And I'm here today in the early days of my appeal to Pharaoh Eric Adams to let my people in the prisons come home to stop the crime running rampant in New York City. I'm here to declare that the subway systems will become rivers of blood, Pharaoh Eric Adams. I'm here to say to you that they will become rivers of blood. More recently, twice this year, someone has been pushed in front of or jumped in front of a subway train, killed instantly. There have been stabbings and slashings on the subway, bloodletting like you won't believe, more recently by the teenagers. But Pharaoh Eric Adams, the subway systems over the next year, unless you let my people go, are going to become rivers of blood. I've got a couple of videos I want to run to let you hear and see the most recent stabbings by teenagers in the subway system and around the high schools of New York City. Mr. Engineer, run clip number 1.
Also in Brooklyn, 4 people stabbed on a subway platform, 3 of them teenagers. It happened on the Flushing Avenue stop. Police say the teenage victims, all 16 years old, plus a 21-year-old, were stabbed after getting into an argument with another group of teenage boys. The victims all walked to nearby Woodhull Hospital for treatment. So far, police have made no arrests.
All right. The subway systems will become rivers of blood. And there'll be so much bloodshed in the subways that it will then rise with high tide on the streets of New York City, Pharaoh Eric Adams. Now, Pharaoh Eric Adams, as you know, Pharaoh didn't think he had to listen to Moses say anything at all. And so he rejected him. But the bloodletting continued. The bloodletting, in fact, Pharaoh Eric Adams, there's a slight possibility, however I doubt it, that you could become America's mayor, because there's crime all over America. There's a crime wave sweeping from coast to coast. It isn't just here in New York City. But were you wise enough to listen to the counsel of the Lord's servant, James David Manning, and implement the Joseph Project by bringing men home to say to their little brothers, don't do what your big brother did? Men who have served at least 7 years of sentences in the prison system, who are ready to return and be profitable citizens the way James David Manning is. Pharaoh Eric Adams, you know, I spent 3.5 years in prison. I was in Dannemora up in Clinton, New York, and I was in the Union Correctional Facility down in Rayford, Florida, 2 of the toughest prisons on planet Earth on the East Coast. And yet I've been home. I've been clean for 44 years. Have not thrown a brick so much as even sneezed wrong in front of a police officer. But I've been able to find 3 schools. I educate children. I've served over 1 million meals. I've saved the city of New York more than $15 million with our breakfast program. Pharaoh Eric Adams, our church has saved the city of New York more than $15 million with our meals and breakfast program. We've educated children for the past 25 years, from kindergarten through high school. Eric Adams, we have housed the homeless. We have saved the city of New York millions of dollars by housing the homeless. feeding the hungry, educating children, and sending them off to great colleges, not to mention our teaching have kept men from going back to crime, married their wives, become fathers to their children, and leaders in their homes and leaders in the community. Millions of dollars has this church, ATLAH, under my leadership with the help of Jesus. And yet I'm now reaching out to you, telling you God's got a word that if you don't reach out and start the Joseph Project to bring men like me, and you'll probably get men better than I who can do better than I, to come home and to clean up the streets of New York City. That the subways are going to run with blood, and so will the streets of New York City. All right, one other video I want you to listen to Pharaoh Eric Adams, and I'll be right back.
Kent County High School was placed on lockdown after police say one student stabbed another student. Both were taken to the hospital. Police say the suspect was treated and released, then placed into police custody. Parents are able to pick their children up early if they want to. We'll continue following this breaking news situation as more information becomes available.
Now, the summer is coming, and we've got extremely high prices for gasoline, extremely high prices for food. There's going to be shortages, and there's going to be a lot of, if you will, sabotage leveled against New York, Pharaoh Eric Adams, by Russia that is going to now do cyber attacks to shut down. There may even be a shutting down of the power grids in western New York that feeds 5 states. I'm not saying I'm wishing for that. There could be the retaliation that the beast, Vladimir Putin and Gog, Russia, against America, may see our subway systems shut down. Our bridges and tunnels, if you will, become compromised by, if you will, internal global warfare that's going on. We need men that are strong men like me that have been in prison. It's called the Joseph Project. Our young people don't have anything to look up to anymore. Many of them are frustrated. The other thing is that there's been such a flooding of homosexuality and perversion over the internet that many of our young people are disillusioned, and they are now losing touch with reality. Ask any parent that's got a child between 3 years old and 24. They are not stable. And all the time, Pharaoh Eric Adams, that these young people were home and not under the watchful eye of a school teacher or a parent, they were online with forces that, well, let me put it to you this way. TikTok is managed by Xi Jinping in China. TikTok in China, in communist China, has more influence over our youth that are now stabbing, refusing to educate themselves, blood going to be running in the streets, amid a number of other things were summer from hell. But TikTok and Xi Jinping, who runs TikTok, have opened door into the lives of our children. And also many of the leaders and people you got around you, they're all now influenced by social media. The men in prison that I will bring home under the Joseph Project, they have not had their brains seared and their conscience washed by social media. They've had limited access to it. They are from the old school. They remember life before Facebook. They remember life before these social media platforms. And they can bring America and the world back to reality. It potentially, I doubt it, but potentially, Eric Adams, it could make you a hero to take such a bold move to settle and bring back a sense of peace. But here in New York City, and Pharaoh Eric Adams, God forbid, I'm certainly not praying this, I'm certainly not praying it, but listen, this is the real world which we live in. If another police officer gets shot or shot and dies, they're going to get rid of you because I've come to talk to you the way Moses came to talk to Pharaoh. and you have rejected it out of hand. And you've let these people who tell you that don't listen to Manning. He's not for our first black president, Obama. Well, first of all, Obama ain't black. Obama got a white mama. Ask Charlemagne the God. Obama didn't do nothing for black people. Ask black people. You got more homeless men now in New York City since Obama than in the history of the whole world, because Obama did nothing for them. Then you got these other religious leaders, all these other bleeding hearts, whites, and liberals around you telling you, well, Manning never says anything good. He's against the Democrats. He's against the LGBTQ. I'm just against them because God is against them. But I'm like Micah the prophet, where the King Jehoshaphat said, is there any word from the Lord? So that our subways and streets do not run with blood. And you let somebody important get stabbed. See, they can walk over on the east side, over on Park Avenue and Fifth Avenue, and walk right by these homeless people who they're not paying any attention to them. But let them get stabbed and die on the streets of the east side of New York, when you could have called the Joseph Project into reality, Eric Adams, and brought the men home so that we can make our streets safe. And they might look over there in Chicago and say, well, it's working in New York. Let's try it in Chicago. It's working in Chicago. Let's try it in Houston. Working in Houston. Let's try it in Los Angeles. Who started it? Pharaoh Eric Adams listened to the Lord's servant, James David Manning, and launched this bold program in order that we might have safety in our streets in what is now going to be a summer from hell, with what's going on in the East, with the war in Ukraine, with inflation, and with a bunch of other things that we've not anticipated, that Russia is coming at our grid. Russia's going to come at our, if you will, power grids. That's right. Russia is going to come at our electrical system. You think that Biden been able to shut down the banks of Russia? Russia got some of the best hackers on the planet, and they're going to come at our banking system. That's right. But you have an opportunity. But you know you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. But at least you've been warned. There is a word from the Lord for New York City and beyond. It's called the Joseph Project. And maybe some of you who have family members, you've talked with your son or your husband or your brother, and you know him. You know him. You know he's ready now to do good. You know he's ready to do good. No point in keeping a man, warehousing a man for another 15 years. He's already done 7. He's ready to come home. He's ready to do good. Yet the city and state gonna warehouse him for another 15 years. You talk to your brother, your father, your husband, your son. You know he's ready to do good now. He ain't going wrong no more. Yet the state want to warehouse him. Just warehouse him, his talents, his abilities, for another 15 years, whereby he'll be unproductive if the world lasts that long. At any rate, Pharaoh, I'm James David Manning. I'm the Lord's servant.
One day I will say Jesus. One day I'll see the angels too. One day I'll see the angels too. One day I'll see Jesus. One day I'll see the angels too. Come and go with me. And things will never be the same with you. One day I will see Jesus. One day I'll see the angels too. One day I will see Jesus. One day I'll see the angels too. Angels sing. Here is our King. Of electric guitar playing this song I sing. Someday I'll see Jesus. Someday I'll see the angels too. Someday I'll see Jesus. Someday I'll see the angels too.
God has given us His word so we can start our lives anew. All the failures that we've had can take us to a greater view. So shake the dust off your feet and walk into His grace. For truth is on the other side, waiting for you to embrace. It's a new beginning. You don't have to cry no more. A new beginning. The Lord has opened up the door. It's a new beginning. For you blessings are in store. A new beginning. Show the world that you can roar. Through all of the pain you held, there is a great breakthrough. Just give Him all the glory while you watch your dreams come true. It's a new beginning. You don't have to cry no more. You don't have to cry no more. A new beginning. The Lord has opened up the door. The Lord has opened up the door. A new beginning. For your blessings are in store. Blessings are in store for you. A new beginning. The world will watch you as you soar. It's a new beginning. You don't have to cry no more. You don't have to cry no more. A new beginning. The Lord has opened up the door. The Lord has opened up the door. A new beginning. For your blessings are in store. Blessings are in store for you. A new beginning. The world will watch you as you soar. God has given us His word so we can start our lives anew.
God says, I'm growing weary of all your feasts and sacrifice. When you assemble before me, but you ain't been living right. I've seen you shout, I've heard you sing, but all that noise don't mean a thing till you break the bonds and loose the chains. I tell you that's my kind of praise. Help someone else before you pray. I want to bless if you'll obey. I see your heart, now mend your ways. I tell you that's my kind of praise. That old good music is mighty sweet. I like to hear it, but it ain't complete till you find a sheep that's gone astray and feed the poor along the way. Start cleaning up the mess you made. I tell you that's my kind of praise. The hymns you sing